you have time and you'd like to do it, we can give you that duty.
When do you have the agenda made up then?
Generally that day.
Okay, that's just was asking.
Yeah.
Any other public comment? Go ahead, Kathy.
I just have a question.
Sure.
On all these right to know requests, it was mentioned a few meetings ago, and I can't specifically say which meeting, but it was said that they were finding a lot of discrepancies in what they're finding. Has anybody come to this board or any of the previous board members to get like the backstory on why that decision was made or why that motion was made, or are they just reading a motion and assuming they know the whole story?
To my knowledge, no.
Pardon me?
To my knowledge, no. Any other public comment? Go ahead, Kathy.
This letter will follow up to our September disclosure of Mr. Sweat's repeated overcharges. We identified 3 different general methods of overcharging by Mr. Sweat. He attempted to explain only one of those methods. Specifically, Mr. Sweat stated that he charges for the time he spends meeting with supervisors before the meetings start as an explanation as to why his bill time exceeds the meeting time. It is our understanding that other solicitors only charge for the actual time of the meetings. Apparently, the Donegal Township supervisors do not mind that the solicitor is fleecing the township, but we as taxpayers do mind, and we demand that the supervisors only pay Mr. Sweat for the time the meetings take. Mr. Sweat made no attempt to explain why his hourly rate went up to $185 on his bills when he was appointed at a rate of $135 per hour. Mr. Sweat made no attempt to explain why several of his bills were submitted with the rate of $235. That is $100 more per hour than his appointed rate. If the supervisors are not going to make an attempt to scrutinize the bills submitted by them, and if they are going to ignore documentary evidence provided to them by a public watchdog, then at the very least the supervisors should demand accurate reports instead of misleading and self-serving statements. Also, on November 6, 2016, the Donegal Freedom Group presented a motion for injunctive relief to prevent the township from advertising that any zoning or land use applications must comply with the draft zoning ordinance that was provided by the supervisors to the Planning Commission in an attempt to evoke the pending ordinance doctrine. Of course, there is no pending ordinance because the Planning Commission has not submitted a draft ordinance for the supervisors to consider. Regardless, Mr. Crooney agreed that the township would not take such an advertisement, rendering preliminary injunctive relief unnecessary. Accordingly, Judge Emery set a hearing date on the Freedom Group's motion to decide the merits of the request to stop the advertisement. An order was signed, and that included the township's agreement to not advertise. Essentially, the township agreed to the requested relief pending a final hearing. Incredibly, Mr. Sweat's report on the litigation was wildly inaccurate and in fact directly opposite the truth. Mr. Sweat proclaimed 100% falsely that the judge refused to hear the motion and threw out the case. While it might make Mr. Sweat look good for his $235 an hour, it does not benefit the township when the solicitor lies to the supervisors about litigation. Mr. Sweat was not even aware of the fact that the hearing had been scheduled. It was therefore quite lucky that a member of the Freedom Group was present to point out to Mr. Sweat that a hearing was scheduled. Otherwise, the township would have been quite surprised to learn after the fact that the judge did not throw the case out.
J.D. Martin, you're up.
Couple things. I can add to that a little bit because I wasn't at hearing. You can't hear me? I can add that a little bit because I was at that hearing. I know none of you guys were, none of you supervisors were Mr. Sweat was. So that's pretty much how it went down. It was just Freedom Group's attorney and supervisors, or township's attorney, Mr. Crooney, Mr. Sweat wasn't there that day, agreed to set a hearing. That was it. Do nothing, set a hearing date, and that's it. That was pretty much it in a nutshell. So when people speak that aren't there and don't know firsthand, that's where we run into problems. Secondly, just a suggestion, I think it would be very nice, before I go to that, I want to commend Mr. Sweat on tonight's action, step in the right direction to do things right with what you presented on the rules of conduct of the meetings. I thought that was excellent. I think Mr. Wright's suggestion of maybe adding a format to advertise the agenda, like I believe you were at the planning commission meeting last week, right? You were at the planning commission meeting, right? How they proposed to do that and advertise the agenda a week ahead of time, and then you've left room to add stuff anyway, but I thought that was excellent, step in the right direction, and might be one of the best things you've presented as long as I've been coming, so I thank you for that. I commend you on that. Also, I think it would be very nice to take another picture, maybe have the picture taker here, and have the supervisors and the fire department up front with the whole community behind them, because it is the whole community that the fire department serves, and it is the whole community that supports the fire department. It is the community's money, both through taxes and Act 13 and everything else, and I think that would be very nice to get another picture with our fire department and the whole community, everybody that's here. And lastly, I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, prosperous 2017. Thank you.
Amy Hines?
Okay, since Mr. Sweat proposed, the new agenda, and if you are considering that, I do not need to speak.
Lee Rogers?
I have a piece of paper here in front of me. It's 5 pages long. It also has an itemized count right here. There's a grand total at the time this was done of $10,135. This is a breakdown of all the right to know requests submitted to Donegal Township. Of these requests, as someone just asked, what the results of any of these requests have been. No one seems to have any idea of what was brought forward or what the result of these requests was. Does anybody? You don't know what I'm talking about?
No, she's reporting on.
That was that whole thing she wrote out.
Gave the audience.
Good, Lee, you got the floor.
Well, like I say, all these requests here I've gone over and looked at and talked to some people about, and we can't find where there's any result from any of this $10,000 has been spent on the right to know requests.
Well,
Okay.
Wait a second, he's out of order.
Lee has the floor.
Tell him no more.
Good, Lee.
The one thing that I've heard is some comments about the lawyer's fee, the solicitor's fees that's been charged. Okay, maybe that's one or two little things. It still hasn't amounted to a total of $10,000. The other thing that has come as a result of these requests is that Mr. Tom Bibby, who runs our water department, resigned. Says he doesn't need to put up with this bullshit. And he doesn't. So for 300 customers here in this township of your so-called Freedom Bunch, where you're representing the people of Donegal Township, where you want to take a picture of the people of Donegal Township,
If the crowd's not allowed to respond.
for 300
You
of
don't
us,
have the floor, Dave.
You're right.
You don't have the floor. You're out of order.
Respectful.
You're out of order. Everyone else had the right to talk and no one interrupted.
so for 300 of us, we're possibly looking at an increase in our rate. But at any rate, we lost a man that's taken care of our water department for quite a few years. Who knows where everything's buried, knows where everything's at. And that's a shame. That's a real pity to us. If somebody thinks that's funny, I'm glad you think that's funny, because 300 customers do not think that's funny. And all these right to know requests where you're going in and looking at bills and what's been spent for the Water Association, I believe we do still have 2 town auditors. John Zwicky, Wicker, who is Jerry Wicker, who's on the planning commission, her husband. Marcy Wright, who is one of the auditors. You're auditing the people over there. You're auditing the time that you were an auditor. That's very interesting, I find. I don't know. But this right to know thing has just gotten completely out of hand. You know, like I say, to serve little to no purpose, as far as I'm concerned. I put a number up here, the number 36. Number 36 represents 36 souls that were burned in a fire in Oakland, California. The warehouse fire in Oakland, California is under investigation. The fire is a result of a landlord who went in, turned a warehouse into a artist's den, which is fine and dandy, that's great, I'm all for art. They built a staircase out of pallets. They petitioned off the building and moved residents in. It's not zoned for residents. They overloaded the electrical circuit several times, blowing the circuit breakers. They then had a party in there with no fire suppression, no marked exits, nothing to protect these people. Planning and zoning avoided all those ordinances that they had up. Fire marshal avoided what the fire marshal knows to be a fact. The investigation is going to go long and deep and probably result in, or could result in, people being charged with murder, because all those people died from smoke inhalation. If their planning and zoning had been in place, if their fire marshal had been in place, if they had all been doing their jobs, possibly this would not have happened. That's all going to come out. This is a good example of why we need planning and zoning, why we need regulation. It's very little, it's not amounted to not. If you look at our pamphlet, what we want to do for planning and zoning in Donegal Township, there's only 57 pages and a map. Compared to most, that's very little. It takes care of, it only covers a few areas. And that's really just all I have to say. I wish you'd take that to thought and think about it.
All right, Lee. All right, Lee.
Anything else?
Yeah, I got one item that I'm moving to.
Wait, there's more comments.
I have a comment. If Mr. Wright's so concerned about the taxpayers' money, who's gonna pay back the right to know request and Tom Bibby's loss we're gonna have for water bills going up? Is Mr. Wright gonna pay that for us?
Good, JD.
A few things.
Can I get an answer off of Kathy on that?
No, don't get the other people in the audience. Yeah.
You started this session by saying conduct yourself in a professional, business-like manner. I've always done that. I'm gonna continue to do that. I can address a couple things. First thing about the $10,000 right to know request. To the best of my knowledge to this point, that has never been proven. It is one of the right to know requests that has not been turned over or proven to this point, as far as I know. Is that correct? Okay. Secondly, I believe, Lee, that number, I believe Oakland, California has zoning and a fire marshal. So I don't understand your point there. It directly does not go with your point, because they have it and it still happens. So it doesn't make sense. As far as Mr. Bibby, he made a choice because he doesn't want to comply with the right to know that there is, and to answer your question, there is thousands of dollars being wasted. I believe $50,000 a year, Water Authority, that far exceeds $10,000, $50,000 a year. Somebody is not doing something right. Somebody is not looking out for the best interest of the, what's that?
Ed?
Okay, so $50,000 to $70,000 a year in water is that's a huge amount. There's stuff being done, there's money being wasted, that is looking out for the taxpayers. And it is, I mean, and if we're gonna, I can stand up and speak up, I don't need to go to the podium, but if that's gonna be the policy, everybody needs to, okay? There's a couple things that I'd like to address that I'm going to point Chris to do in a more professional and business-like manner, if you would
All right, I'll go to the
Please.
podium.
finish.
I don't know why Mr. Rogers was
Just,
looking at
just a
me
question. Are you
for the group.
representing the group? Because if you're not, you.
I know, I'm not a resident,
You're
I'm
not a
here for the
resident.
group. I was just appointed to do that.
Okay. then-
I don't know why Mr. Rogers was looking at me.
You're appearing officially then? Can I put-
Yes,
Can you please, Chris?
Christopher P. Furman, F-U-R-M-A-N,
Thank you,
bar ID 89822,
thank you.
representing Donegal Freedom Group.
Okay.
These right-to-know requests, I mean, we have 22 different municipalities that I represent. You get a right-to-know request, the right-to-know officer processes it and hands it over. These cost $10,000 because it's not going through your right-to-know officer. It's going through your solicitor's office. Why they're spending so much time looking at these things, I don't know. But these documents aren't theirs. These documents are yours. They belong to you. In every local municipality, the township's documents are yours. You have a right to go look at them. And if they're spending money watching people look at them or going over them, or I don't know what the hell they're doing, I don't know why you can't hand them over, that's where the money comes in, is in the processing, and in the scrutiny, and in the review, and how they choose to react to a right-to-know request is what dictates how much money is going to be spent. But these documents belong to you, the public, and you have a right to see them. It's a part of the American foundation of open government. You have to be able to see what they're doing. It's how you hold them accountable. Groups like the Donegal Freedom Group, maybe some of you don't like them right now, but these watchdog groups are what keeps government accountable, okay? And that's what they're trying to do. Somebody asked, what was the result of the right-to-know requests? You can look at the pleadings that I've filed to see what the results of the right-to-know requests are. They're public. They're down in the courthouse. Go look them up. See what I attached as exhibits. See what I used as a part of what was uncovered in the right-to-know requests, including the last 3 meetings that I was at. Ms. Croft asked questions to everybody and gave them chances to explain. Somebody said, why don't you give them a chance to explain? They did. All the meetings I was at, they asked. She came up here tonight and told you what they found in those right-to-know requests and what they found that they think are overcharges that everybody should know about. So, I don't know why you're looking at me when you're talking about how much the right-to-knows cost. I just work for the group. I didn't make any right-to-knows, but it seemed like you wanted to know what the answer was, what we found. I'm telling you, look at the pleadings that have been filed, which could be filed, and the things that Ms. Croft has already brought to the board's attention. That's all. Anybody else? Good, Tom.
If they're so worried about their water and what it costs, I live out in the country. I shouldn't be responsible for their water. I have water. Why don't they get it? They're the ones that lost West Alexander, not us. And they can have their zoning, get their town back, take care of themselves. We don't, in the country, we take care of ourselves.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Doug.
it's a matter of perspective. What's important? And sometimes we have trouble as individuals determining what's important. I can tell you, I for one, have learned what's important in my life. I can tell you what, it's not Donegal Township. And it's not the price of water. A whole lot more than that. It was the group of people, such as a group of people that met here 2 or 3 weeks ago in this very room to say a prayer for this township, to say a prayer for the public officials. It was the people in my church who prayed for the supervisors. I've never ever heard it done before. Since a member back there in my church who took me aside and prayed for me, that this all would end. His wife came up and handed this to me on Sunday morning and was crying when she gave it to me. And it says, what word would you use to describe adversity in your life? To most people, it's a heavy, inescapable burden that wears them down, saps their joy, and hinders them from truly living. Christians, however, have the opportunity to see adversity as a bridge leading to a glorious eternal future. Yep, you've helped me build a lot of bridges. I appreciate that. Gives you a whole different perspective. Gives you a whole different perspective when yesterday, slightly more than 24 hours ago, I'm having a heart cath because I'm having chest pains. Maybe caused by the Donegal Freedom Group, but should make you happy. We got people on this board that I know that are good people. Mr. Prescott served this country well, retired from the military. I know this man right here goes out on his own time and helps build ramps for people. That man back there helps them. And this woman here, nobody bends over to help people in this township any more than she has. And I can tell you, she and I have not always agreed, but she does her job. That lady right there, we didn't get along, but she's a good woman. This community's being destroyed. Some of you are happy and laugh about it. Guess what? Doug Teagard is not going to be part of that. That's the way it goes. By the way, if you want to look it up and read it, and it says a burden or a bridge was the quote of this, but it comes out of 2 Corinthians, verse 7 and 18. With that, I move we adjourn.
Make a motion? You second it?
Yep.
Any questions? How you, go JD.
It's not, you can, motion to adjourn doesn't.
I
Mr.
just
Ely?
Yes.
I
I
just
vote
want to
yes,
say
Mr. Prescott.
nobody's laughing or happy about it, and I pray for you guys almost every day.
Well, we appreciate that, JD, we certainly do. I'm serious when I say that.
And I'm serious when I say it.
Do I write construction of Bonneville Township on my resume or just?
That's bottom line.
You're the horseback rider, right? I see you. No, we're saying kind of fair. You've been a good one. Woo.
Planning and development process. Nobody's qualified.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. Where's Very good. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
This doesn't get the seal.
And I have no problem doing it. We can all sit around. Leave at the end.
Either way,
You were talking entirely too much. The whole time, like this.
I'm still sick, I don't get sick.
I heard you're gonna get. I guess we're lost in your.
Everybody here. We still didn't get the next meeting. Everybody here. Anybody here. Yeah, where you got him? Okay. Right now with him. Maybe not, no. Oh, you were back there?
You wanna ride? Yeah, it, well, let's, yeah.
It's just me.
Huh? Front wash. You get schooled. Well, they already, the high county already started left.
Why are you looking? My company makes give me a 2 hour delay.
You're gonna lose your
So that's a hell of a lot more than 10,000. I don't want to know that.